Jimmy meets a man in a dark hallway. They talk about a risky plan. Outside, two men stand near a diner. Rain slicks the pavement. They wait. Jimmy and the man walk down a wet alley. Their steps echo. Tension builds. The man checks his phone. Jimmy watches. Something's about to go wrong. They find a body on the ground. Jimmy freezes. The man moves closer. The man lies still. His tie is red. His watch glints in the dim light. Jimmy stares at the body. He doesn't move. He doesn't breathe. Jimmy steps back. He grabs a stick. He's ready to defend himself. He faces the man who's still standing. Their eyes lock. No words. Jimmy walks away. The man stays. The body remains. Silence follows. Back in a dim room, Jimmy sits. He drinks. He's shaken. He's alone. The man in the suit watches Jimmy. He holds a gun. He doesn't speak. In the woods, Jimmy stands with two others. A red bag sits on the ground. Jimmy looks at the bag. He knows what's inside. He doesn't touch it. A man in a dark shirt stares into the trees. He's confused. He's scared. Jimmy speaks to the man. His voice is low. He's trying to explain. The red bag opens. Stacks of cash spill out. Money lies on the leaves. The man and a woman stand together. They look at Jimmy. They're worried. Jimmy hands something to the woman. She takes it. He looks away. Jimmy stands alone again. He's thinking. He's planning. He's not done. Jimmy smiles in the dark, already plotting his next move after the alley incident. Mike stares out a window, lost in thought after the cash handoff in the woods. Mike flips a newspaper page, his mind still on the dangerous job he just left. Jimmy pulls up to Mike's booth, needing his help for a risky new plan. Nacho looks down, refusing to meet Jimmy's eyes as they discuss the deal. Jimmy leans over a table in the station, desperate to make the case work. Jimmy and Nacho stand face to face in the hallway, tension thick between them. Nacho lifts his chin, signaling he's ready to play his part in Jimmy's scheme. Nacho locks eyes with Jimmy, silently agreeing to the dangerous plan ahead. The day spa and nails sign glows at night as Jimmy arrives for his next hustle. Jimmy counts stacks of cash, planning how to turn this money into clients. He feeds bills into a money counter, every click bringing him closer to his goal. A tailor measures Jimmy, crafting the perfect look for his public persona. Jimmy listens as the tailor notes his measurements, playing the part perfectly. He holds up an orange suit, the bold color matching his growing ambition. Jimmy sits in a salon chair, smiling as a woman hands him a stack of flyers. The stylist clips his hair while he talks, turning the salon into his office. Kim stares at files, her mind racing as she tries to stay ahead of the chaos. She picks up her phone, calling someone to fix a problem Jimmy caused. Howard stands by a whiteboard, his expression cold as he watches the fallout. Jimmy stands by the road, watching a car drive away. He's planning something big. He looks up, smiling. This is his moment to finally make a name for himself. His plan is bold, become a hero to get clients, but it's risky. Inside a dark salon, Kim walks past a glowing fish tank. She's waiting for Jimmy. They sit in pedicure chairs, relaxing. Jimmy's mind is already racing ahead. Kim stares at him. She knows he's scheming again. She's tired of it. She speaks quietly, warning him. His ideas always blow up in his face. Jimmy laughs it off. He's sure this time will be different. He's got it. Kim argues back. She's done covering for his reckless stunts. Enough is enough. Jimmy tries to calm her down. He needs her to believe in him just once. They sit in silence. The tension is thick. Their partnership is hanging by a thread. Later, Jimmy meets with Chuck. He's trying to get his brother's approval. Chuck listens, unimpressed. He doesn't trust Jimmy's methods or his motives. Jimmy pleads his case. He wants to be seen as a real lawyer, not a joke. Chuck shuts him down. He's not ready. Jimmy walks away, frustrated. Jimmy writes notes in a hallway. He's already moving on to his next move. He makes a call, pacing. He's setting up the big stunt. No turning back now. He scribbles names in his notepad. Every detail must be perfect for the plan. A giant billboard goes up. James M. McGill, attorney at law. He's all in. A camera rolls as Jimmy poses for the ad. He's selling the dream. He's ready. Jimmy stands before a camera, ready to launch his new ad campaign. He turns to face his giant billboard, a bold statement of his new identity. Jimmy speaks passionately into the camera, selling himself as a hero. The ad plays on TV, showing Jimmy's face towering over the city. The cameraman smiles, satisfied with the shot he just captured. A worker dangles from the billboard, creating a fake rescue scene. Jimmy climbs up, pretending to save the man hanging from the structure. The worker grabs Jimmy's hand, playing his part in the staged rescue. The billboard stands tall, now a symbol of Jimmy's desperate hustle. Executives watch the ad in a boardroom, impressed by Jimmy's stunt. Jimmy sits alone in the dark, eating a sandwich, contemplating his move. The screen cuts to black, a moment of silence before the fallout. Jimmy walks outside, a small smile on his face, thinking he's won. He hides his suit in a trash bin, trying to erase the evidence. Chuck watches Jimmy from the shadows, his face unreadable. Jimmy confronts Chuck, demanding to know why he's being watched. Jimmy gestures wildly, trying to justify his actions to his brother. Chuck walks away, leaving Jimmy standing alone in the dark room. Chuck stands in the dim light, silent, as the weight of the moment settles. He wraps himself in foil, retreating into his own world of isolation. Chuck McGill wraps himself in foil, clutching cash as he hurries outside. He stumbles down the path, foil rustling, desperate to escape the house. Inside, Chuck slumps in a chair, sipping coffee, still wrapped in foil. The screen cuts to black. Silence hangs heavy after his frantic escape. Sony Pictures' television logo flashes, signaling the story's return. A window blind trembles slightly, hinting someone watches from inside. Police cars pull up outside Chuck's house, lights flashing silently. Close-up, crumpled foil glints, a relic of Chuck's desperate shield. Chuck moves through dark hallways, foil cloak trailing behind him. He peers through a peephole, listening for any sign of intrusion. An officer presses his ear to the window, trying to hear inside. Two cops stand at the front door, one holding a baton, ready. They knock firmly, demanding entry, voices echoing off the brick. Chuck leans against the door, voice strained, refusing to open it. The screen cuts to black again, leaving his fate hanging in the air. A yellow car drives up a long driveway toward a desert mansion. Jimmy McGill steps out, briefcase in hand, facing the imposing house. He sits in a leather chair, swirling whiskey, plotting his next move. He speaks calmly, but his eyes betray the weight of his decisions. Jimmy reaches for something off-screen, his plan already in motion. Jimmy McGill sits in a leather chair, smiling as he plans his next move. He raises a glass, toasting a man in a safari jacket across the room. Jimmy leans back, his expression calm, ready to make his pitch. The man in the jacket stares at stacks of cash laid out before him. Jimmy holds up a single bill, making his offer clear and direct. He walks outside, leaving the mansion behind, his mind racing. Jimmy stands in a garage, staring at a toilet covered by a blue tarp. A man in a plaid shirt gestures at the tarp, explaining the setup. The tarp is pulled away, revealing a brand new toilet in the garage. A small device is attached to the toilet tank, hidden from view. Jimmy looks at the toilet, then at the man, weighing the risk. The man in plaid speaks urgently, warning Jimmy of the consequences. Jimmy drives away, his face set, already plotting his next step. He sits in a cozy living room, waiting for an elderly woman to arrive. She descends the stairs, surprised to see him sitting in her home. Jimmy stands as she enters, holding a notepad ready to talk. He sits across from her, speaking softly, trying to win her trust. She listens, hands folded, as he explains his unusual proposal. Jimmy leans forward, his voice persuasive, pushing for her agreement. He holds the notepad, smiling, knowing he's just won a new client. Jimmy McGill arranges a display of figurines, setting up a scene with careful precision. He paints a woman's toenails, focused on the task despite the oddity of the situation. Jimmy looks up, his expression shifting as he considers his next move carefully. He talks with the woman, their conversation serious, the mood heavy between them. She speaks firmly, her voice carrying weight as she lays down her terms. His eye widens slightly, a flicker of realization crossing his face in the dark. Jimmy rushes to a hospital bed, grabbing his brother Chuck's shoulder urgently. A security guard steps in, stopping Jimmy from getting too close to Chuck. The guard holds Jimmy back, his grip firm as Jimmy resists being pulled away. Jimmy argues with Kim, gesturing toward Chuck as the doctor watches silently. Kim stares straight ahead, her face unreadable as she processes the situation. The doctor explains Chuck's condition, her tone calm, but her words serious. She continues speaking, her hands moving as she details the medical concerns. Jimmy listens, his posture tense as the doctor finishes her explanation. The doctor clasps her hands, her voice softening as she offers reassurance. Jimmy stands beside the bed, his hand resting on Chuck's blanket, silent. Kim offers a small, forced smile, trying to ease the tension in the room. Jimmy's face falls, his shoulders slumping as the weight of the moment hits him. Chuck lies still in the bed, his breathing slow, the machines beeping softly. Jimmy turns away, walking toward the door, his steps heavy with regret. Jimmy argues with a doctor outside Chuck's hospital room, demanding answers about his brother's condition. He walks down the hall, passing nurses and patients, his frustration growing with every step. Jimmy turns sharply, his voice rising as he confronts the doctor about Chuck's care. He stops at a wall, staring at a patient chart, his mind racing with worry and anger. Howard Hamlin and Kim Wexler approach, blocking his path, their expressions serious. They stand in the hallway, a tense standoff forming as Jimmy refuses to back down. Jimmy clenches his fist, his voice tight as he warns Howard not to interfere with Chuck. He storms out of the hospital, the heavy doors closing behind him, leaving the chaos behind. Chuck sits alone in his dark living room, his hands moving slowly as he speaks to himself. He gestures vaguely, his words trailing off as he sinks deeper into his thoughts. Jimmy enters the dim room, his silhouette stark against the slivers of light from the windows. He holds up a newspaper, pointing at an article as he tries to convince Chuck of something. Jimmy stands over Chuck, his voice low and urgent, pressing his case with intensity. He paces the room, his hands open as he pleads with Chuck to see his point. Chuck, wrapped in foil, listens silently, his face unreadable in the shadowed room. He shifts slightly, his voice barely audible as he responds to Jimmy's desperate argument. A TV flickers in the dark, showing a man in a suit speaking confidently to a courtroom. Chuck watches the screen, his hand resting on a notepad as he scribbles notes quietly. His pencil moves quickly, sketching a figure in a suit, adding details with focused precision. The camera pans over a busy senior center where residents play cards and chat, unaware of the drama unfolding elsewhere. Two elderly women play dominoes, one holding a cup with Jimmy McGill's face on it. A hand stirs a cup with a Call McGill logo, dominoes lined up nearby. Jimmy stands in a senior center, leaning over a table, talking to a man. Jimmy points across the room, addressing the seniors as he makes his pitch. Mike sits alone in the toll booth at night, the only light on the road. A car pulls up to Mike's booth. He leans in to speak with the driver. Jimmy hands Mike a business card through the car window, smiling. Mike stares at the card, then looks down, ignoring Jimmy's offer. The car drives away. Mike remains in the booth, alone under the bridge. Dawn breaks. Mike walks away from the empty toll booth, heading home. Mike eats alone in a diner, watching the street through the blinds. A quiet suburban house sits under a clear blue sky, car parked out front. Kim sits in her car staring ahead, parked on a residential street. Kim watches another car pull up, her eyes fixed on the driver. Mike sits in his car, looking out the window, deep in thought. The street is quiet, cars parked, trees swaying in the morning sun. A classic car parks on the curb near a brick house, driver inside. Mike relaxes in his living room, remote in hand, TV glowing. He stands up suddenly, turning away from the screen, pacing slowly. The screen cuts to black, credits roll for the costume designer. Mike walks alone on a long, empty bridge, lost in thought. At the station, Kim waits as a train pulls in, watching closely. Passengers step off the train, but Kim's eyes stay fixed ahead. Mike enters the station lobby, scanning the room with quiet purpose. A sign points to the restrooms. Mike turns down the hallway. Kim follows him, her steps silent, her focus unbroken. Mike stops in the tiled hallway, glancing back as if sensing her. He enters the men's room. The door clicks shut behind him. In the dark stall, Mike pulls out a small, hidden device. He adjusts his shirt, hiding the device under his collar carefully. The title card flashes. Better Call Saul. The game is on. Mike pushes a little girl on a swing, his voice soft and calm. Kim stands nearby, arms crossed, watching him with suspicion. The girl plays in the sandbox as Mike and Kim talk in the yard. Mike pours iced tea at the patio table, his movements slow and steady. Kim asks him a question. Her tone is sharp, demanding answers. Mike meets her gaze, silent for a moment, then speaks quietly. Kim's arms stay crossed as she listens, her posture rigid. She leans forward, pressing him. He doesn't flinch, doesn't blink. Mike stares back, his voice low. He won't back down now. Kim confronts Mike at his home, demanding answers about his actions. Mike remains silent, refusing to explain himself to her. Kim crosses her arms, frustrated by his stubbornness. She insists he owes her the truth after his risky moves. Mike walks away, unwilling to engage in the argument. He picks up a bag on the sidewalk, preparing for his next job. Mike drives to a location, reviewing notes in his car. A gloved hand injects Mike with a needle in a dark room. Mike stands in a clinic watching someone gather supplies. He shows his bandaged shoulder, explaining the injury. Mike puts on his jacket, ready to leave the clinic. He sits across from a man in a dim interrogation room. Jimmy arrives at the station, meeting with police and lawyers. Jimmy enters the room, facing Mike with a serious look. Jimmy speaks firmly, trying to reason with Mike. He warns Mike about the consequences of his choices. Mike listens, then responds with a calm, steady voice. He refuses to back down, standing his ground. Jimmy and Mike sit together, negotiating a tense deal. Jimmy pushes for an agreement, needing Mike's cooperation. Jimmy sits across from Mike in a dim room, pushing for a deal. Mike refuses to budge, his silence heavy. Jimmy leans in, voice low. He needs Mike to talk, but Mike won't give him what he wants. Detective Alvarez watches, arms crossed. He's waiting for Mike to crack, but Mike stays quiet. The table holds a notepad, a cup, an ashtray. Tension hangs thick as Jimmy tries to break Mike's wall. Mike stares back, unblinking. He's heard it all before. Nothing Jimmy says changes his mind. Mike's jaw tightens. He won't betray his code, even if it means staying locked up longer. Jimmy throws his hands up. He's out of options. The detective nods. She knows Mike won't fold. Jimmy stands frustrated. He's done talking. Mike just watches him. Calm, unreadable. Mike walks out, Jimmy trailing behind. The detective shrugs. She's not getting anything from Mike. In the car, Mike flips through a notepad. Jimmy watches, wondering what he's really planning. Jimmy holds up the notepad. He's trying to read Mike's next move, but Mike gives nothing away. Jimmy turns to Mike. He asks what's next, but Mike just looks out the window, silent. Mike sits alone at a table, reading the notepad. He's piecing something together, slowly. Mike's fingers tap the paper. He's not just thinking, he's planning, and it's serious. Mike steps into a dark hallway. He's heading home, but something feels off. He pauses. Mike faces his granddaughter. He's back, but she doesn't smile. She's waiting for an explanation. Mike doesn't answer her. He just stands there, heavy with what he's done and what he'll do. Mike turns away. He can't tell her the truth. She deserves better than his world. She watches him leave. She knows he's hiding something. But she doesn't push. He never lets her. She stands alone in the dark. The silence says more than words ever could. He's gone again. Mike Ehrmantraut walks alone down a dark alley, snow piled high. He approaches a parked police car, its lights flashing in the night. Mike opens the car door, his movements slow and deliberate. He pulls out a small object, examining it under the dim light. Inside a bar, Mike downs a drink, his voice low and tense. Two cops sit nearby, sharing beers, unaware of his presence. One cop gestures while talking, the other listens intently. Mike leans in, placing a hand on a cop's shoulder, speaking. The bar is nearly empty, quiet except for distant chatter. Mike sits at the bar, a glass untouched before him. He stands, coat in hand, and walks toward the exit slowly. Mike steps back into the cold alley, shadows swallowing him. Inside their patrol car, two cops watch him through the window. One cop leans close to the other, whispering urgently. A cop holds a gun, pointing it at Mike inside the car. Mike slumps in the backseat, eyes closed, breathing heavily. He opens his eyes, staring straight ahead, silent and still. The cop in the backseat watches him through the cage bars. Mike blinks slowly, his expression unreadable in the dark. The two cops drive off, leaving the night eerily quiet behind. Mike sits in the back of a police car, silent as they drive through the dark. The patrol car pulls into a deserted lot, its lights cutting through the night. One officer hands the other a gun, whispering something urgent in the dark. Mike grabs the gun, aims it steadily at the officer standing before him. The officer drops to his knees, blood trickling down his neck as Mike walks away. Mike stands over the two fallen officers, the patrol car's lights still flashing. He turns and walks away, leaving the scene behind without looking back. Rain streaks the windshield as Mike drives, his face set and unreadable. He parks outside a quiet house, steps out and walks toward the front door. Inside, he sits on the couch, waiting as someone enters the dim living room. Mike stares ahead, his voice low as he begins to explain what just happened. He speaks plainly, his words heavy with the weight of what he's done. He doesn't flinch, doesn't look away, just tells the truth as it is. A woman sits across from him, listening, her hands clasped tightly together. She asks him questions, her voice calm but her tone edged with concern. She leans forward, her hands open, pleading with him to reconsider. She tells him he doesn't have to carry this alone, that she's here. Mike stares at her, his face unreadable, absorbing every word she says. He doesn't answer right away, letting the silence stretch between them. He finally speaks, his voice quiet, but the weight of it fills the room.